The rain pounded against the windows of the modest two-story house in suburban Chicago, mirroring the storm raging in Eleanor Harper's heart. Her husband, Jonathan, had been missing for 3 days. The police had combed through his office, their home, and even the murky waters of Lake Michigan, but there was no trace of him. Eleanor sat on the couch, clutching a crumpled note in her trembling hands. It was the only clue Jonathan had left behind. "I'm sorry, Ellie. I can't do this anymore. The debts, they're too much. Forgive me." The words didn't make sense. Jonathan, a charismatic entrepreneur who'd built a small but thriving tech startup, had always been the optimist, the one who saw light at the end of every tunnel. Yet, the note hinted at a man broken by invisible burdens. Eleanor's chestnut-brown eyes, usually warm and lively, were now hollow, rimmed with red from sleepless nights. The living room, once filled with laughter and Jonathan's endless startup pitches, felt like a mausoleum. "Mrs. Harper, we're doing everything we can," Detective Ramirez said, his voice steady but tinged with pity. He stood by the fireplace, his notepad open. "But with no body, no witnesses, and no activity on his accounts, we have to consider all possibilities." Eleanor's voice cracked. "You think he's dead?" Ramirez hesitated, glancing at his partner, Officer Chen, who lingered near the doorway. "It's possible. The note suggests he was under immense pressure. People in debt sometimes—" He trailed off, unwilling to finish the thought. Eleanor's best friend, Beatrice, burst into the room, her curly auburn hair damp from the rain. "Ellie, you can't keep torturing yourself like this," she said, dropping her umbrella and rushing to Eleanor's side. "You haven't eaten in days. Let me make you some tea, okay?" Eleanor shook her head, her gaze fixed on the note. He wouldn't just leave. Not like this. We were planning a trip to Paris next month. He was talking about expanding the business. This isn't him." Beatrice knelt beside her, her voice soft but firm. "I know, honey. But people hide things. Even from the ones they love." The detective cleared his throat. "Mrs. Harper, we found some irregularities in your husband's business accounts. Large withdrawals, offshore transfers. Did he ever mention financial trouble?" Eleanor's brow furrowed. "No. He said everything was fine. He was working on a big deal with some investors. He was excited." Ramirez exchanged a glance with Chen. "We'll keep digging. If you find anything, letters, emails, anything unusual, call me." He handed her his card and left, the door clicking shut behind him. Beatrice squeezed Eleanor's hand. "You're not alone, Ellie. We'll figure this out together." But as the rain continued to fall, Eleanor couldn't shake the feeling that Jonathan's disappearance was no accident. It was a calculated act, and she was the one left to unravel the mystery. 3 weeks later, the world had moved on, but Eleanor was stuck in a limbo of grief and uncertainty. The police had officially declared Jonathan missing, presumed dead, and the headlines had already faded from the local papers. Tech entrepreneur vanishes amid financial ruin had been replaced by stories of political scandals and celebrity gossip. Eleanor, however, was drowning in the aftermath. The creditors came knocking first. Jonathan's startup, HarperTech, was millions in debt, and Eleanor, as his widow, was suddenly responsible for the fallout. She stood in the company's glass-walled office, staring at the empty desks where coders and designers once buzzed with energy. Now, the space was a ghost town, the servers silent, the dreams shattered. "Mrs. Harper, you need to sign these," said Mr. Grayson, the stern-faced bankruptcy lawyer, sliding a stack of papers across the desk. "The liquidation process will clear some of the debts, but the personal loans, those are on you." Eleanor's voice was barely a whisper. "How much?" Grayson's eyes softened, but only slightly. $2.3 million. And that's just the principal." Her knees buckled, and she gripped the edge of the desk. $2 million. How did this happen? Jonathan never told me." Grayson sighed. "He leveraged everything, your house, your savings, even your retirement fund. I'm sorry, Mrs. Harper. He hid it well." That night, Beatrice dragged Eleanor to a small diner, determined to pull her out of her spiral. The neon sign buzzed outside, casting a pink glow over their booth. Beatrice pushed a plate of fries toward Eleanor. "Eat something, Ellie. You're fading away." Eleanor stared at the fries, her mind elsewhere. I keep replaying our last conversation. He was so normal. He kissed me goodbye, said he'd be late because of a meeting. How could he lie like that? Beatrice leaned forward, her green eyes blazing. Listen to me. You are not defined by his mistakes. You're Eleanor Harper, the woman who organized charity galas and taught yoga to kids. You're stronger than this. Eleanor managed a weak smile. I don't feel strong, Bea. I feel like I'm drowning. Then let me throw you a lifeline, Beatrice said, her tone fierce. We'll fight this. We'll sell what we can, negotiate with the creditors. You're not losing everything. But as they left the diner, Eleanor's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Check his laptop. You'll see. Her heart raced. Was someone watching her? Or was this just another cruel twist in her nightmare? The next morning, Eleanor sat at the kitchen table, Jonathan's sleek silver laptop open before her. She hadn't touched it since his disappearance, afraid of what she might find. The anonymous text had haunted her all night, and now, with Beatrice hovering nearby, she typed in the password, Ellie loves Jay, and held her breath. The screen lit up, revealing a maze of files and folders. Most were business-related, but one folder, labeled Personal, caught her eye. Inside were encrypted documents, and Eleanor's stomach churned. She wasn't tech-savvy enough to crack them. I need help, she muttered, slamming the laptop shut. Beatrice raised an eyebrow. You need a hacker? No, Eleanor said, a spark of determination in her eyes. I need someone who knew Jonathan's world. Enter Daniel Carter, a former colleague of Jonathan's who'd left Harper Tech a year ago to start his own law firm. Eleanor had met him only once, at a company gala, where his sharp wit and quiet confidence had left an impression. Now, standing in his minimalist office downtown, she felt a flicker of hope. Eleanor, I'm so sorry about Jonathan, Daniel said, his blue eyes warm but guarded. He leaned against his desk, arms crossed. How can I help? She handed him the laptop. I got a text telling me to check this. There's a folder I can't open. I think Jonathan was hiding something. Daniel's brow furrowed as he took the laptop. A text? From who? I don't know. It was anonymous. She hesitated, then added, I don't think Jonathan's dead, Daniel. I think he ran. Daniel's expression didn't change, but his eyes sharpened. That's a serious accusation. Let's see what's on here first. They sat together as Daniel worked his magic, bypassing the encryption with surprising ease. The folder revealed a series of bank statements, offshore account numbers, and emails to someone named S. The emails were cryptic, mentioning a clean slate and a new start. Eleanor's voice trembled. What does this mean? Daniel leaned back, rubbing his jaw. It means Jonathan was moving money. A lot of it. And he wasn't doing it alone. Who's S? She asked, her heart pounding. I don't know yet, Daniel said, his tone resolute. But I'll find out. For now, don't tell anyone about this. Not even Beatrice. Eleanor nodded, her mind racing. Why are you helping me, Daniel? You barely know me. He smiled faintly, a shadow of pain in his eyes. Let's just say I know what it's like to be betrayed by someone you trust. Over the next week, Eleanor and Daniel became an unlikely team, poring over Jonathan's digital footprint. They met in secret at a quiet coffee shop, away from prying eyes. The more they dug, the more inconsistencies they found. Withdrawals that didn't match Harper Tech's records. A lease for an apartment in Miami under a different name. A plane ticket to Rio, booked the day before Jonathan vanished. He planned this, Eleanor said, her voice low as she sipped her coffee. He didn't just run from the debts. He ran from me. Daniel leaned forward, his voice calm but intense. Eleanor, people don't go to these lengths unless they're desperate or calculated. Jonathan was smart. He knew exactly what he was doing. She shook her head, tears welling. I thought I knew him. We were married for 8 years. How could I miss this? Don't blame yourself, Daniel said, his hand brushing hers briefly before pulling back. He fooled everyone. But we're onto him now. Their conversation was interrupted by another text from the unknown number. "Look at the cloud. Folder, New Horizons." Eleanor's blood ran cold. "Someone's guiding us," she whispered. Daniel's jaw tightened. "Or setting us up. We need to be careful." That night, Eleanor couldn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling, replaying every moment of her marriage, searching for signs she'd missed. Jonathan's late nights, his sudden trips, his guarded phone calls. The pieces were falling into place, and with each one, her grief morphed into something sharper, anger. Daniel called Eleanor the next morning, his voice urgent. "I cracked the New Horizons folder. You need to see this." They met at his office, where Daniel projected the files onto a screen. There were photos of Jonathan in a tropical city, smiling with a woman Eleanor didn't recognize. There were bank transfers to an account in the Cayman Islands. And, most damning, a scanned passport under the name Arthur Grayson. "He faked his death," Daniel said, his voice steady but grim. "He's alive, Eleanor. Living as Arthur Grayson, probably in South America." Eleanor's knees gave out, and she sank into a chair. "Why? Why would he do this to me?" Daniel knelt beside her, his voice soft. The debts were just the excuse. He wanted out, of the business, the marriage, everything. He planned this for months, maybe years. Eleanor's hands shook as she stared at the photo of Jonathan with the mystery woman. "Who is she?" "I'm working on it," Daniel said. "But I found something else." He transferred most of his assets to her. "She's not just a fling, she's his partner in this." Eleanor's grief ignited into fury. "He left me to drown in his mess, and he's out there living a new life? I want him found, Daniel. I want him to face this." Daniel nodded, his eyes burning with determination. "We'll find him. And when we do, he'll answer for everything." As Eleanor left Daniel's office, the rain had stopped, and the city sparkled under a rare burst of sunlight. But inside, a storm was brewing. Jonathan had betrayed her, but she wasn't the helpless widow he'd left behind. She was Eleanor Harper, and she was ready to fight. In the sun-drenched streets of Cartagena, Colombia, Jonathan Harper, now Arthur Grayson, sipped an espresso at a seaside cafe, his tanned face relaxed behind dark sunglasses. The man who'd once juggled boardroom meetings and creditor calls was unrecognizable, his dark hair now cropped short and streaked with gray, his tailored suits replaced by linen shirts. He'd traded Chicago's gray winters for a vibrant coastal city, where no one knew his name or his sins. His new life was a masterpiece of reinvention, built on the ashes of the one he'd torched. At a nearby table, a street musician strummed a guitar, the melody blending with the chatter of tourists. Jonathan's phone buzzed, and he glanced at a message from Serafina, his new partner. "Meeting with the investors went well. They're in for $5 million. Dinner tonight." He smiled, typing a quick reply. "Perfect. Can't wait to celebrate." Serafina was the key to his new empire. A sharp, ambitious woman with a knack for closing deals, she'd been his lifeline since they met at a tech conference in Miami, just weeks before his disappearance. She believed his story of being a widower fleeing a tragic past, and together, they were building a new tech venture. Clean, untraceable, and free from the debts that had suffocated HarperTech. As he leaned back, savoring the salty breeze, Jonathan felt untouchable. Eleanor, his creditors, his old life, they were ghosts, buried thousands of miles away. But ghosts have a way of rising, and Jonathan was blissfully unaware that his past was closing in. Back in Chicago, Eleanor Harper sat in Daniel Carter's office, her eyes fixed on a grainy photo of Jonathan and Serafina, taken from a hacked security camera in Cartagena. The woman was striking, tall, with sleek black hair and a confident smile. Eleanor's stomach twisted, not with jealousy but with a burning need to understand the full scope of Jonathan's betrayal. "Who is she?" Eleanor asked, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. Daniel tapped his laptop, pulling up a dossier he'd compiled. Serafina Vega, 34, born in Bogota, educated at MIT. She's a venture capitalist with a reputation for turning startups into gold. She's been linked to Jonathan, or rather, Arthur Grayson, for the past 6 months. They're pitching a new AI platform, and it's gaining traction. Eleanor's jaw tightened. So, he didn't just run. He planned a whole new life with her. Daniel nodded, his expression grim. It gets worse. Most of the money he siphoned from Harper Tech went into her accounts. She's either complicit or clueless, but either way, she's part of this. Eleanor leaned forward, her fingers tracing the edge of the photo. I need to know everything about her, Daniel. If she's helping him, she's as guilty as he is. Daniel hesitated, his blue eyes searching hers. Eleanor, this is getting dangerous. Whoever's sending you those anonymous texts, they know too much. They could be an ally or a trap. Eleanor's phone buzzed, as if on cue. Another text from the unknown number. Serafina's not the mastermind. Look at her emails. Folder, Project Phoenix. She showed it to Daniel, her heart racing. Project Phoenix. Daniel muttered, already typing. Sounds like a code name. They accessed Serafina's cloud storage, thanks to Daniel's less-than-legal contacts. The folder contained plans for a revolutionary AI algorithm, Jonathan's brainchild, stolen from Harper Tech's archives. He'd sold it to Serafina as his own, claiming it was his ticket to a fresh start. Eleanor's voice was cold. He didn't just betray me. He stole from his own company, his own people. Daniel closed the laptop, his tone urgent. We have enough to expose him, but we need to be smart. If we move too fast, he'll disappear again. Eleanor met his gaze, her resolve hardening. Then we move carefully. But I'm not stopping until he's ruined. The weight of Jonathan's deception settled over Eleanor like a lead blanket. She stood in her living room, surrounded by photos of her and Jonathan, smiling at their wedding, laughing on a beach, toasting at a gala. Each memory was a lie, tainted by his calculated escape. Beatrice, sensing her friend's turmoil, arrived with a bottle of wine and a fierce determination to keep Eleanor grounded. Ellie, you can't let this consume you, Beatrice said, pouring 2 glasses. He's a coward, but you're not. You're going to fight this, right? Eleanor took a sip, the wine bitter on her tongue. I want to be. But every time I think I'm close to understanding, there's another layer. This Serafina woman, she's not just some fling. She's his partner, his future. Beatrice's eyes narrowed. Then let's take them both down. You've got Daniel, you've got me, and you've got that creepy anonymous tipster. Use it. Eleanor managed a small laugh, the first in days. You make it sound so easy. It's not, Beatrice admitted, her voice softening. But you're not the woman he married anymore. You're tougher. Smarter. He's going to regret underestimating you. Their conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. It was Daniel, his face pale. We need to talk. Now. They gathered at the kitchen table, where Daniel spread out printed emails from Serafina's account. These confirm it, he said. Jonathan fed her a story about being a grieving widower. She doesn't know about you, Eleanor. She thinks you're dead. Eleanor's breath caught. He told her I died. Daniel nodded. It's how he justified starting over. He's using her, just like he used you. Eleanor's anger flared, but beneath it was a flicker of pity for Serafina. She's a victim too, isn't she? Maybe, Daniel said, his tone cautious. But she's profiting from his lies. We need to decide how to approach this. Confronting her could blow up in our faces. Eleanor stared at the emails, her mind racing. I want to meet her. Face to face. She needs to know the truth. Daniel's eyes widened. That's a bold move. Dangerous, too. I'm done playing safe, Eleanor snapped. He took everything from me. I'm taking it back. The next morning, Eleanor woke to nausea so intense she barely made it to the bathroom. She chalked it up to stress, until she realized she'd missed her period. A trip to the pharmacy confirmed her fear. She was pregnant. The test sat on the counter, its 2 pink lines a stark reminder of the life she and Jonathan had once planned. Now, it was a complication she hadn't anticipated. She called Beatrice, her voice shaking. B, I'm pregnant. It's Jonathan's. Beatrice arrived within the hour, her face a mix of shock and resolve. Okay, deep breath. This changes things, but it doesn't stop you. You're going to be an incredible mom, Ellie. Eleanor clutched the test, tears streaming down her face. How am I supposed to do this? Fight Jonathan, raise a child, deal with the debts? It's too much. Beatrice grabbed her shoulders, her voice fierce. You're not alone. You've got me, Daniel, and soon, a little fighter who's going to give you every reason to keep going. This baby is your strength, not your weakness. Eleanor nodded, wiping her eyes. I need to tell Daniel. He's part of this now. They met at the coffee shop, where Daniel listened in stunned silence as Eleanor explained. His usual composure cracked, revealing a flicker of protectiveness. This complicates things, he said, choosing his words carefully. But it also gives us leverage. If Jonathan's alive, he's legally responsible for this child. We can use that. Eleanor's voice was firm. I don't want his money. I want him to face what he's done. For me, for this baby. Daniel leaned forward, his eyes intense. Then we keep digging. But you need to stay safe, Eleanor. For both of you. As they left the coffee shop, another anonymous text buzzed. He's planning to sell Project Phoenix. Act fast. Eleanor's grip tightened on her phone. The clock was ticking, and her child's future was at stake. 9 months later, Eleanor gave birth to a healthy boy, Leo, in a Chicago hospital room bathed in soft morning light. Holding her son, she felt a surge of love and determination. Leo, with his tiny fists and dark eyes, was the heir to a legacy she hadn't yet reclaimed. Jonathan's betrayal had left them both orphaned in a way, but Eleanor vowed Leo would never know the pain of abandonment. Beatrice, ever the doting aunt, cooed over Leo. He's perfect, Ellie. Look at those cheeks. He's going to break hearts someday. Eleanor smiled, but her mind was elsewhere. He's why I'm doing this, Bea. Jonathan thinks he can erase us, but Leo deserves better. He deserves the truth. Daniel arrived, carrying a stuffed lion for Leo. How's the little warrior? He asked, his smile genuine but tinged with worry. Perfect, Eleanor said, cradling Leo. But we need to talk. What's next? Daniel sat beside her, lowering his voice. I've tracked Jonathan and Serafina to a tech expo in Bogota next week. They're pitching Project Phoenix to a group of investors. If we can expose him there, in front of his new world, he's done. Eleanor's eyes gleamed with resolve. Then we go to Bogota. I want him to see me, to know I'm not broken. Daniel hesitated. With Leo, it's risky. He stays with Beatrice, Eleanor said, her tone final. But I'm going. This ends now. Beatrice grinned, bouncing Leo gently. You go get him, Ellie. I've got this little guy. As Eleanor looked at her son, she saw not just a child, but a symbol of her fight. Jonathan had tried to erase her, but she was rewriting the story, for herself, for Leo, and for justice. Eleanor Harper stood in her Chicago apartment, gazing at her 3-month-old son, Leo, as he slept peacefully in his crib. The soft hum of a lullaby played from a mobile above, its tiny stars casting shadows on the walls. Leo's existence had transformed Eleanor, turning her grief into a fierce, unyielding resolve. Jonathan, now living as Arthur Grayson, had abandoned them both, but Eleanor was no longer the shattered widow he'd left behind. She was a mother, and she would fight for her son's future. Beatrice burst into the room, her energy as vibrant as ever. Ellie, you look like you're plotting a revolution, she teased, setting down a bag of groceries. What's the plan? Eleanor turned, her eyes blazing. We're going to Bogota. Daniel says Jonathan's pitching Project Phoenix at a tech expo next week. It's our chance to expose him. Beatrice's jaw dropped. You're flying to Colombia? With Leo? No, Eleanor said firmly. You're staying here with him. I can't risk bringing him into this mess. Beatrice nodded, her expression softening. I've got Leo, don't worry. But Ellie, are you sure about this? Confronting Jonathan, it's going to be ugly. Eleanor's voice was steel. He left me to drown in his debts. He left his son without a father. I want him to look me in the eye and see what he's done. Later that evening, Daniel arrived, his laptop open to a detailed itinerary. The expo's a big deal, he said, spreading out a map of Bogota's convention center. Investors, tech moguls, media, they'll all be there. If we can prove Jonathan's fraud in front of them, his new life collapses. Eleanor leaned over the map, her finger tracing the layout. How do we do it? Daniel's eyes met hers, steady and confident. We've got the documents, bank transfers, the fake passport, the stolen algorithm. I've got a contact in Bogota, a journalist named Carla who's hungry for a scoop. We leak the evidence to her, and she'll make sure it hits the expo like a bomb. Eleanor's heart raced. And Serafina? What's her role in this? Daniel hesitated. She's still a wild card. If she's innocent, she'll be as shocked as everyone else. If she's complicit, we'll deal with that too. Eleanor nodded, her resolve unshaken. Let's do this. For Leo. In the days leading up to the expo, Eleanor and Daniel worked tirelessly, orchestrating a subtle but devastating sabotage of Jonathan's new venture. Using Daniel's network of tech insiders, they planted seeds of doubt among Jonathan's investors. Anonymous tips about irregularities in Project Phoenix's funding reached key players, causing whispers of unease. A hacked email from Arthur Grayson to a shady offshore bank was accidentally leaked to a tech blog, sparking rumors of fraud. Eleanor sat in a Chicago coffee shop, her laptop open to a live feed of social media posts about the expo. They're starting to question him, she said, her voice tinged with satisfaction as she scrolled through X posts. Project Phoenix fraud is trending. Daniel, sipping a black coffee, grinned. That's just the beginning. I've got a friend in cybersecurity who's digging into their servers. If we can crash their demo at the expo, it'll humiliate Jonathan in front of everyone. Eleanor raised an eyebrow. You're enjoying this a little too much. Daniel's grin faded, replaced by a flicker of intensity. I've seen guys like Jonathan before. They think they're untouchable, but they always leave a trail. We're just following it. Their conversation was interrupted by another anonymous text. Check the expo guest list. Look for M. Torres. Eleanor showed it to Daniel, her pulse quickening. Who's M. Torres? Daniel's fingers flew across his keyboard. Mateo Torres, a private investigator based in Miami. He's on the guest list as a consultant for Serafina's firm. My guess. He's the one feeding us intel. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. Why would he help us? Maybe he's got his own score to settle, Daniel said. Or maybe he's just a good guy. Either way, we use it. As they finalized their plan, Eleanor felt a surge of power. She wasn't just fighting for justice, she was dismantling Jonathan's empire, piece by piece. In Cartagena, Serafina Vega paced her sleek penthouse apartment, her phone buzzing with alerts about the growing controversy surrounding Project Phoenix. The rumors of fraud were spreading like wildfire, and Jonathan's explanations weren't adding up. She poured herself a glass of wine, her sharp mind racing as she replayed their recent conversations. Arthur, what's going on? She demanded that morning, cornering him in their shared office. Investors are pulling out. They're saying the funding's dirty. Tell me you're not hiding something. Jonathan, his face a mask of calm, had laughed it off. Sarah, it's just competitors stirring up trouble. You know how cutthroat this industry is. We're fine. But Serafina wasn't convinced. She'd noticed his late-night calls, his guarded emails, the way he flinched when she mentioned his past. Now, as she opened her laptop, she found an anonymous email with a single attachment, a photo of Jonathan with a woman in Chicago, dated years ago. The caption read, "His wife isn't dead." Serafina's heart pounded. She called Mateo Torres, her trusted investigator. Mateo, I need you to dig deeper into Arthur Grayson. Everything, his past, his finances, his story. I think he's lying to me. Mateo's voice was gruff but reassuring. I'm already on it, Ms. Vega. I'll have answers by the expo. But be careful. This guy's slippery. As she hung up, Serafina stared at the photo, her anger simmering. If Arthur, Jonathan, was playing her, she'd make sure he paid. The Bogota Tech Expo was a glittering affair, with sleek booths showcasing the latest innovations and investors buzzing with anticipation. Eleanor, disguised in a sharp blazer and glasses, blended into the crowd, her heart pounding as she spotted Jonathan on the main stage. He was all charisma as Arthur Grayson, pitching Project Phoenix to a packed auditorium. Serafina stood beside him, her smile professional but strained. Eleanor clutched a USB drive containing the evidence, bank records, the fake passport, emails proving Jonathan's fraud. Daniel, stationed backstage with Carla the journalist, gave her a subtle nod. It was time. As Jonathan wrapped up his pitch, Carla stood, her voice cutting through the applause. "Mr. Grayson, I have a question. Can you explain the $10 million transferred from Harper Tech to offshore accounts under your real name, Jonathan Harper?" The room fell silent. Jonathan's smile faltered, his eyes darting to Serafina, who froze. "I'm sorry, there must be a misunderstanding," he stammered. "My name is Arthur Grayson." Eleanor stepped forward, removing her glasses. "No, it's not," she said, her voice clear and commanding. The crowd gasped as she walked onto the stage, her eyes locked on Jonathan's. "You're Jonathan Harper, my husband. You faked your death to escape your debts and left me to clean up your mess." Jonathan's face drained of color. "Ellie, you're alive." The irony of his words hit her like a slap. "You told everyone I was dead," she said, her voice trembling with rage. "You abandoned me, our life, and our son." The auditorium erupted in murmurs. Serafina's eyes widened, her hand covering her mouth. "Son," she whispered, turning to Jonathan. "You have a child." Before Jonathan could respond, Daniel stepped forward, holding up the USB drive. "We have proof, bank transfers, a fake passport, stolen intellectual property. Jonathan Harper defrauded his company, his wife, and his investors." Carla's camera crew was already rolling, broadcasting the confrontation live. Jonathan backed away, his charm crumbling. "This is a setup," he shouted, but the crowd was turning against him. Eleanor held his gaze, her voice steady. "You thought you could erase me, Jonathan. But I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." Backstage, chaos reigned. Investors demanded answers, reporters swarmed, and Jonathan was escorted out by security, his face a mask of panic. Serafina followed Eleanor to a quiet corner, her expression a mix of fury and disbelief. "Is it true?" Serafina demanded. "You're his wife. He told me you died in a car accident." Eleanor nodded, her anger softened by Serafina's shock. "He lied to us both. He faked his death to escape his debts and used you to build his new life." Serafina's hands shook as she processed the betrayal. "I trusted him. I put my reputation on the line for Project Phoenix." "I know," Eleanor said softly. "But you can help me stop him. We have evidence that can put him away for fraud. Will you testify?" Serafina hesitated, her pride warring with her sense of justice. Finally, she nodded. "He used me. I won't let him get away with it." She turned to Jonathan, who was being detained nearby. "You're done, Arthur, or whatever your name is," she said, her voice icy. "I'm cooperating with them. Every email, every deal, every lie. I'm turning it all over." Jonathan's eyes widened in desperation. "Sarah, please. We can fix this." "There's no we," she snapped. "You're on your own." As Serafina walked away, Eleanor felt a strange kinship with her. They were both victims of Jonathan's deceit, but together they were unstoppable. The fight wasn't over, but for the first time, Eleanor felt like she was winning. The Chicago courtroom was a stark contrast to the vibrant chaos of the Bogota Expo. Its wood-paneled walls and hushed atmosphere amplified Eleanor Harper's racing heartbeat as she sat at the plaintiff's table, her hands clasped tightly. Across the room, Jonathan, his Arthur Grayson persona shattered, looked diminished in an ill-fitting suit, his once confident demeanor replaced by a nervous tic in his jaw. The custody battle for their son, Leo, was the final front in Eleanor's war to reclaim her life. Daniel Carter, her lawyer and steadfast ally, leaned close, his voice low. "We've got a strong case, Eleanor. His abandonment, the fraud, the lies, it's all documented. The judge will see him for what he is." Eleanor nodded, her eyes fixed on Jonathan. "I just want Leo safe. He doesn't deserve a father who'd throw him away." The judge, a stern woman with gray hair pulled into a tight bun, called the court to order. Eleanor's testimony was first. She stood, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. Jonathan Harper faked his death to escape his debts, leaving me to face millions in liabilities alone. I didn't know I was pregnant when he disappeared. He abandoned our son before he was even born. The courtroom was silent, the weight of her words hanging heavy. Jonathan's lawyer, a slick man named Hargrove, tried to paint him as a victim of circumstance. My client was under immense financial pressure, Hargrove argued. He made poor choices, but he never intended to harm his family. Daniel was relentless in his cross-examination. Mr. Harper, did you or did you not transfer $10 million from Harpertech to offshore accounts under a false identity? He asked, holding up the damning bank records. Jonathan squirmed. I was trying to protect my family. By faking your death and starting a new life with another woman? Daniel shot back, his voice cutting. You left your pregnant wife to face your creditors alone. That's not protection, that's cowardice. The gallery murmured, and Eleanor caught Serafina Vega's eye in the back row. Serafina, now a key witness, had flown to Chicago to testify. Her presence was a silent promise. Jonathan's lies would not go unpunished. As the hearing adjourned for the day, Eleanor approached Serafina outside the courthouse. "Thank you for being here," she said, her voice soft. "I know this isn't easy for you." Serafina's expression was guarded but resolute. "He fooled me too. I want him to face the consequences." Eleanor nodded, a flicker of solidarity passing between them. The fight for Leo was personal, but it was also a reckoning for everyone Jonathan had betrayed. The weeks following the expo were a death spiral for Jonathan. His assets, frozen by an injunction Daniel had secured, left him unable to flee or rebuild. The media frenzy, fueled by Carla's viral exposé, branded him a fraudster, his face plastered across news sites and X-posts with hashtags like faked death fiend. Investors pulled out of Project Phoenix, and Serafina, now fully cooperating with authorities, turned over every email and contract, sealing his fate. In a dimly lit interrogation room, Jonathan faced Daniel and a federal prosecutor. His charm was gone, replaced by a desperate edge. "I can make this right," he pleaded, his hands cuffed to the table. "Give me a chance to pay back the debts." Daniel leaned forward, his eyes cold. "You had your chance, Jonathan. You chose to run, to lie, to abandon your wife and son. The evidence is airtight: fraud, identity theft, embezzlement. You're looking at years in prison." Jonathan's voice cracked. "What about Eleanor? She doesn't want this. We can work something out." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Eleanor wants justice. And she's not the naive woman you left behind. You underestimated her, and that's your biggest mistake." Outside, Eleanor watched through a one-way mirror, her heart a mix of pain and resolve. Seeing Jonathan so broken didn't bring the satisfaction she'd expected. Instead, it felt like closing a chapter she'd outgrown. She turned away, ready to focus on Leo and the future. The courtroom was packed on the day of the final ruling. Eleanor sat beside Beatrice, who squeezed her hand as the judge delivered the verdict. "In the matter of custody, I grant full legal and physical custody of Leo Harper to Eleanor Harper," the judge declared. Mr. Harper's actions demonstrate a clear disregard for his responsibilities as a parent. Eleanor's eyes welled with tears, relief flooding her. Beatrice hugged her tightly. "You did it, Ellie. Leo's safe." The judge continued, addressing Jonathan's financial crimes. "Based on the evidence of fraud and embezzlement, Mr. Harper is ordered to pay restitution to Harpertech's creditors and a settlement to Mrs. Harper for her undue hardship." The gavel fell, and Jonathan was led away, his head bowed. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, but Daniel shielded Eleanor as they made their way to a waiting car. "You're free," he said, his voice warm. "You and Leo can start over." Eleanor smiled, a weight lifting from her shoulders. "I couldn't have done this without you, Daniel. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself." He shrugged, a rare blush creeping up his neck. "You made it easy. You're a fighter, Eleanor." As they drove away, Eleanor glanced at her phone, expecting another anonymous text from Mateo Torres. Instead, there was a message from Serafina: "I'm sorry for my part in this. If you ever need an ally, I'm here." Eleanor hesitated, then typed a reply: "Thank you. Maybe one day." 6 months later, Eleanor stood in the lobby of a sleek Chicago office building, the headquarters of her new venture, Phoenix Rising Solutions. The name was a deliberate nod to Jonathan's stolen Project Phoenix, but this company was hers, built on integrity, not deceit. Using the settlement from Jonathan's assets, she'd invested in a startup focused on ethical AI development, hiring former HarperTech employees who'd been left jobless by Jonathan's collapse. Beatrice, now her unofficial cheerleader and part-time consultant, burst through the doors with a bottle of champagne. "Ellie, this place is incredible!" she exclaimed, gesturing at the modern decor. "You're a freaking mogul!" Eleanor laughed, a sound that felt lighter than it had in years. "I'm just getting started, B. But it feels right. For me, for Leo." Daniel arrived, carrying a bouquet of lilies. "Opening day gift," he said, handing them to her. "I'm proud of you, Eleanor. This is just the beginning." She took the flowers, her cheeks warming. "You're staying on as legal counsel, right? I'm not letting you escape that easily." He grinned, his eyes crinkling. "Wouldn't dream of it. Besides, someone's got to keep you out of trouble." Their banter was interrupted by a call from the nanny. Leo was awake and ready to be picked up. As Eleanor drove to get her son, she felt a sense of peace. The scars of Jonathan's betrayal remained, but they no longer defined her. She was building a legacy for Leo, one of strength and honesty. 5 years later, Eleanor Harper was a name synonymous with resilience. Phoenix Rising Solutions had become a leader in ethical AI, featured in Forbes and lauded for its innovative approach. Eleanor, now a sought-after speaker, stood on a TED stage, her voice confident as she shared her story. "I was a widow, a debtor, a single mother," she told the audience. "But I learned that betrayal doesn't define you, your response to it does." Backstage, Leo, now a lively 5-year-old with his father's dark eyes and his mother's fierce spirit, ran to her, hugging her legs. "Mommy, you are awesome," he chirped. Eleanor scooped him up, laughing. "Thanks, buddy. Ready for ice cream." Daniel joined them, his role in Eleanor's life having grown from ally to partner. Their relationship, built on trust and shared battles, was a quiet strength. "You nailed it," he said, kissing her forehead. "But I'm not surprised." Beatrice, ever the proud aunt, snapped a photo. "This is going on X. Eleanor inspires," she said with a wink. Far away, in a small apartment, Jonathan watched the TED Talk on a flickering TV. Released from prison after a reduced sentence, he was a shadow of his former self, scraping by as a low-level coder. Regret gnawed at him as he saw Eleanor's radiant smile, Leo's joyful face. He'd lost everything, his empire, his family, his pride. Eleanor, meanwhile, drove home with Leo and Daniel, the Chicago skyline glowing against the night. Another anonymous text arrived, the first in years. "You won. Well done." She smiled, suspecting Mateo Torres, and deleted it. She didn't need validation from ghosts. Her victory was in Leo's laughter, her thriving business, and the life she'd built from the ashes. As she tucked Leo into bed, she whispered, "You're my reason, little man. Always." The legacy of her resilience would live on, not just in her success, but in the love she gave her son, a love Jonathan could never take away. The end.